The throne chamber had fallen silent, except for the labored breathing of its queen and the distant sounds of chaos spreading through the living world. Bayon Thesserek knelt on the organic floor. Her massive form diminished as somehow, her compound eyes reflecting something that had never existed in their depths before. Fear. True fear, the kind that comes from realizing that everything you believed about the universe was incomplete. Adoni stood before her despite his wounds, supported partly by Marae and partly by sheer stubbornness that refused to let him fall in front of an enemy. Terms, he said simply. The queen's mandibles clicked weakly as she processed the impossible situation. 3,000 years of unbroken rule, 200 conquered star systems, billions of warriors ready to die at her command, and she was negotiating with two soft creatures from an irrelevant planet because they have found the one weakness in her perfect armor. Her connection to her world was her greatest strength. It had also become her greatest vulnerability. The humans may leave, the Sarek said, each word forced through damaged pride. All of them. With safe passage to the border of my domain, no pursuit, no retaliation. And the Orinthi who helped us? The queen's eyes narrowed. You ask much. I ask for justice. Your rebels get amnesty. You pull your forces back from their homeworld and give them a chance to rebuild. Call it a gesture of good faith. Good faith. The Sarek repeated the words as if tasting something unfamiliar. You have invaded my home, killed my guards, and brought me to my knees. Now you speak of faith. I speak of the future, Delian said. Right now you are angry and humiliated. I understand that, but when you have time to think clearly, you will realize something important. What would that be? I came alone. The queen went still. One human did all of this. Dohin continued. One human with no special technology, no fleet, no army. Just determination and a willingness to suffer. Now imagine what would happen if you gave humanity a reason to come back in numbers. Imagine 1,000 humans with nothing left to lose. Imagine 10,000. Imagine 1,000,000. He let the numbers hang in the air. We are not worth conquering, he said. We are barely worth noticing. But if you make us your enemy, we will become your nightmare. Not because we are strong or advanced or special, but because we simply do not know how to stop fighting. Thesserek considered this for a long moment behind her. Warriors shifted nervously, their compound eyes flicking between their queen and the human who spoke to her as an equal. The Orinthi will have their amnesty, the Sarek finally said, and humanity will have its warning delivered. Tell your people that the Velkari Dominion considers them beneath notice. Tell them to remain in their small corner of the galaxy and cause no trouble. I will tell them something better, Doyin said. I will tell them that the great Queen the Sarek looked at one human and decided that we were not worth the trouble of fighting. They can draw their own conclusions from there. The queen made a sound that might have been bitter laughter. You are a strange creature. Human. I have studied 1,000 species, and none of them have confused me as much as you have in these past hours. You fight without hope of victory. You love without logic. You sacrifice without benefit. Your existence contradicts every principle of efficient survival. That is probably why we are still around. Perhaps the Sarek rose slowly to her full height, damaged pride reasserting itself despite her defeat. Go, she commanded. Take your people and leave before I reconsider this moment of weakness. And pray that we never meet again. The journey home took 3 weeks. The Persistent was too small for all the colonists. So the Sarek had grudgingly provided a transport ship that the Orinthi rebels now piloted toward human space. This had embraced Dohyun before they parted ways, her scarred feathers rough against his skin. You have given us something we lost long ago, she told him. Hope that the Dominion can be challenged. Hope that tyranny is not eternal. We will not waste this gift. Now Do-hyun sat in the medical bay of the transport while Mireille treated his wounds with the careful precision that had always defined her work. His ribs were cracked in 4 places. His left arm was fractured. Internal bleeding had required emergency surgery that Mireille performed with steady hands and absolutely no proper equipment. He would survive. Always survived. You should not have come, Mireille said quietly as she sealed another wound. Probably not. You could have died. You almost did die. Multiple times. Also true. This was the stupidest thing you have ever done. And you once tried to arm wrestle a loading robot because someone bet you could not win. In my defense, I did win. Mireille stopped working and looked at him with eyes that held too many emotions to name. Why? She asked. We were getting divorced. I left you. I moved across the galaxy to get away from you. Why would you risk everything for someone who gave up on us? Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. You never gave up. He finally said, you left because you needed space. You filed paperwork because you were tired of waiting, but you never gave up. You kept my dog tags. He touched the metal pieces that hung around her neck. If you had really wanted to be done with me, you would have sent these back. You would have cut the last connection between us and moved on with your life. But you kept them, even when it hurt, even when it made no sense. You held on to this one piece of me. Tears began sliding down Mireille's face. I wanted to return them, she whispered. So many times I wanted to, but I could never make myself do it, because part of you was still waiting for me to come home. You were never home, she said. And the words carried years of loneliness and frustration. Even when you were there, you were somewhere else, fighting some war in your head, carrying burdens you would not share. I loved you, but I did not know how to reach you anymore. I know. Do-hyun took her hands in his. I was broken when I came back from the wars. Not in ways anyone could see, but in ways that mattered. I pushed you away because I did not want you to see how damaged I was. I kept silent because I thought my pain would become your burden. I was trying to protect you, and instead I lost you. You did not lose me. Not completely. Because you kept the tags. Because hope is stubborn, and love does not follow logic. Because humans do not know how to quit, even when quitting makes sense. He smiled despite the pain. The Queen asked me why. I came all this way for one person. She could not understand the mathematics of it. The risk versus reward calculation that made my actions absurd by any rational standard. What did you tell her? I told her that mathematics do not apply to humans. We love who we love, and we fight for what matters, and we crawl through the waste systems of living worlds. Because giving up is simply not an option. Mireille laughed through her tears. That is the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. I was also covered in biological waste at the time. So maybe take it with some context. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was not a kiss of passion or desire, but something deeper and more important, a kiss of reconnection, a kiss of promises. Kept and promises yet to make a kiss that said we are not finished yet when they finally separated. Mireille reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded document, the divorce papers. She had carried them all through her captivity, had kept them close even when she had no reason to believe she would ever need them again. Do-hyun watched as she tore them in half, then quarters, then eighths. The pieces floated to the floor like snow. I am not saying everything is fixed, she said. I am not saying we do not have work to do. We both need to learn how to be honest with each other, really honest. Not the polite distance we confused for marriage. Agreed. But I am saying I want to try again. I am saying that a man who crawled through alien waste for 4 days to save me deserves another chance. I am saying that these dog tags still mean something, and I am not ready to give them back. She pressed her hand against his chest. Come home. Doyan, really home this time. Not just your body, but all of you. The broken parts, and the silent parts, and the parts that still fight wars in the dark. I will try. That is all I ask, across the galaxy. In the throne chamber of Velkar Prime, Queen Nissarak issued a new directive to her information specialists update the species database under the entry for humanity. A single notation was added: do not engage, do not provoke, do not underestimate. These creatures do not understand mathematics, they only understand loyalty, and they never stop fighting for the people they love. The warning spread through the Dominion like a whisper, passed from system to system, hive to hive, until every Velkari knew that somewhere in the galaxy existed a species of soft creatures who had humbled their immortal queen. Most considered it a cautionary tale, others called it propaganda, but none of them ever forgot, and humanity continued on, unaware that they had become the subject of legend, building their colonies and living their lives and loving each other with the stubborn determination that had always defined them. They were small and short-lived and utterly unremarkable by galactic standards. They were also completely unstoppable, and that made all the difference. The biopod wrapped around Mireille like a living cocoon, its membrane walls pulsing with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat, as if the organic prison was learning her biology with every passing moment. She had been held here for 8 days, according to her internal count. Though time moved strangely in a place with no sun and no night, the other colonists floated in similar pods throughout the vast chamber, their faces peaceful in chemically induced sleep. Mireille alone remained conscious. Queen Nissarak had ordered it. The queen found humans fascinating, and she wanted her prize specimen alert and aware for their conversations, so Mireille stayed awake and watched and learned everything she could about her captors. She was a xenobiologist, after all, studying alien life was literally her purpose in the universe, and the Valkyrie provided endless material for study. Their society operated on principles that seemed almost mechanical in their precision. Every individual knew its role from birth. Workers worked, warriors fought, scientists studied, and the queen ruled. There was no ambition, because ambition implied dissatisfaction with one's place. There was no rebellion, because rebellion implied imagination beyond one's function. Each Valkyrie was a perfect piece in a perfect machine, and the machine had ground forward for 10,000 years without significant change. It was impressive in its terrible efficiency. It was also, Mireille realized, deeply fragile. A machine worked only as long as every piece performed its designated function. Remove one piece, and the entire system would struggle to adapt. The Valkyrie had no practice dealing with the unexpected, because nothing unexpected ever happened within their perfect order. Mireille stored this observation away for later use. Queen Nissarak visited her regularly. Drawn by a curiosity that seemed almost scientific in nature, the queen would stand before Mireille's pod and ask questions for hours, her compound eyes reflecting her prisoner like shattered mirrors. "Explain bonding to me," the queen demanded during one such session. "What kind of bonding?" "The kind between paired humans. I have observed that your species forms exclusive reproductive partnerships. This seems inefficient." Mireille almost laughed. "Marriage is not about efficiency. Then what is its purpose?" Mireille considered the question carefully, knowing that her answer would be analyzed and dissected by an alien mind that might not be capable of understanding it. "Marriage is about choosing someone," she finally said. "Not because you have to, not because it makes logical sense, but because you want to share your existence with that specific person." The queen's mandibles clicked in what might have been confusion. "But humans already share existence with their entire species. Your lives are intertwined with your communities, your nations, your world. Why would two individuals need additional connection? Because sometimes the whole species is not enough," Mireille said. "Sometimes you need to know that one person sees you completely and chooses to stay anyway. The Zarek absorbed this information with visible difficulty. Your records indicate you are currently severing such a bond, she said. A process you call divorce. Explain this contradiction. The question hit Myray like a physical blow. He had not thought about the divorce papers since the attack, had not allowed herself to remember why she had come to Hespera 7 in the first place, why she had left Oyunwi. She had run to the far edge of human space to escape a man who had never once asked her to stay. Sometimes the bond breaks, she said quietly. Sometimes people change and grow in different directions. Sometimes love is not enough to bridge the distance between two people. Yet you kept his identification markers, Zarek observed. The metal pieces that humans wear around their necks. You still carry them despite initiating separation. Why? Myray touched her chest instinctively, feeling the slight weight of Dahyun's dog tags beneath her clothing. She had worn them for 7 years. Ever since he pressed them into her hands before his first deployment. Keep them until I come home. He had said she never gave them back, even when home stopped feeling like a shared place, even when his silences grew longer than his words, even when she finally admitted that loving him was not the same as being able to live with him. I do not know, she admitted. Maybe I'm not ready to let go completely. Maybe part of me still hopes. Hopes for what? Myray closed her eyes. That he will come for them. The Queen made a sound that translated roughly to amusement. He will not come. Your male is one small creature on the other side of the galaxy. The mathematics of rescue are impossible. You do not know him. I know physics. I know distance. I know the limitations of your primitive technology. Hope is merely delusion wearing pleasant clothes. Myray said nothing. There was nothing to say, but deep inside her, in the place where logic could not reach, she refused to believe Adoyan had never broken a promise to her, not once in 7 years, and those dog tags represented a promise he had yet to fulfill far below the prison chamber, in tunnels that no sane creature would enter. Something moved through the darkness. Dohyun had stopped counting the hours after the first daytime ceased to have meaning in this place of perpetual nightmare. The waste processing system of Velkar Prime channeled the biological refuse of millions of Velkari through organic tubes that pulsed and contracted like living intestines. The smell alone would have killed a weaker person. The corrosive fluids that periodically flooded the tunnels would have dissolved flesh from bone. The absolute darkness would have driven even the strongest mind toward madness. Dohyun endured it all. He wrapped himself in salvage materials that provided minimal protection against the caustic environment. He breathed through filters that clogged every few hours and required desperate cleaning. He crawled forward inch by inch through passages that sometimes narrowed until he had to exhale completely to squeeze through, and he refused to stop. His body screamed for rest, and his mind begged for light, and his soul demanded he turn back before this living nightmare consumed him entirely. He ignored all of it. 3 days in the tunnels. 3 days without sleep. 3 days of Helland. Still he climbed upward toward the prison levels, following the mental map that Kethis had burned into his memory. Valkyrie never guarded these passages, because no species in their vast experience would willingly subject themselves to such conditions. They had not encountered humans. They had not learned that humans were uniquely capable of suffering for the people they loved. They had not discovered that the soft creatures from the small planet in the unimportant corner of the galaxy possessed something their perfect machine society could never replicate: stubbornness beyond all reason, hope beyond all logic, love beyond all mathematics. On the 4th day, Dohyun emerged from the waste tunnels into a maintenance corridor. He was covered in filth that burned his skin. His eyes could barely focus. After so long in darkness, his body felt like it belonged to someone else, a broken puppet held together by will alone. But he was inside, he was close, and somewhere above him, Myray still wore his dog tags of Valkyrie. Maintenance worker turned a corner and froze at the impossible sight before it. Something covered in filth and barely recognizable as a living creature stood in the corridor. Something that smelled of waste and determination, something that smiled with teeth too white for its blackened face. The worker never had time to sound an alarm. Dohyun moved forward. The prison was waiting, and so was his wife. The prison wing of Velkar Prime hummed with the quiet efficiency that characterized everything the Dominion built. Organic walls pulsing gently as they monitored their inhabitants. Guards patrolling in perfect patterns that had not changed in centuries. Dohyun watched them from the shadows of a ventilation shaft, counting steps and timing rotations with the patience of a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He had cleaned himself as best he could in a maintenance station, trading the filth of the waste tunnels for the slightly less offensive grime of recycled water. His weapons were limited to a knife taken from a dead worker and a length of wire that could serve multiple purposes against an army of Velkari warriors. It was almost nothing against creatures who had never faced a human in close combat. It might be enough. The first guard died silently, the wire closing around its throat and cutting off any attempt at alarm. Dohyun lowered the body carefully and took its weapon, a sleek energy pistol designed for insectoid hands but functional enough for human fingers. The second guard turned at exactly the wrong moment and received a blade through its compound eye. The third and fourth died together, their synchronized patrol pattern becoming a synchronized death as Dohyun struck from two angles in rapid succession, moved through the prison wing like a disease, spreading chaos through a system designed for order. The Velkari fought with hive mind coordination, each warrior knowing exactly where the others would be, each movement flowing into the next like water. Dohyun fought like a storm. He changed directions without warning. He attacked when he should have retreated. He retreated when he should have attacked. He did nothing that made sense according to their tactical databases, and everything that made sense to a human who had survived a dozen wars against enemies who underestimated him. By the time alarms finally began screaming through the corridors, a dozen elite guards lay dead. Dohyun reached Moray's pod and stopped. She floated inside the organic membrane, her eyes wide, her mouth forming his name without sound. He pressed his hand against the pod wall, and she pressed hers from the inside, separated by inches that felt like light years. "I told you I would come back," he said. Tears streamed down her face. "The controls," she managed, pointing to a panel on the wall. "Third sequence from the left." Dohyun entered the code and the pod split open, spilling Mireille into his arms. She was lighter than he remembered, smaller somehow. When she wrapped her arms around him and buried her face in his chest, she felt exactly like home. "We need to move," he said gently. "Can you walk? I can run if you need me to." That was his Miri, always stronger than she looked. They freed the other colonists quickly, Mireille directing him to each pod while he neutralized the guards who came to investigate the alarms. The colonists were weak from captivity, but fury gave them strength. These were frontier people who had built homes from nothing on alien worlds. They did not surrender quietly, the Arn said. "They are staging a distraction at the perimeter. We need to reach the landing bays before the Sarek locks down the entire structure." "The Sarek will not let us leave," Mireille said. "She is connected to this place. She feels everything that happens here. She already knows," as if summoned by her name. The walls around them began to change. Corridors shifted and closed. New passages opened where none had existed before. The living structure was responding to its queen's will, reshaping itself to trap the intruders. "This way," Mireille said, grabbing Dohyun's hand. "I studied the biological systems while I was captive. I know how she thinks." She led them through a maze of organic tunnels, anticipating the changes before they happened. guiding the group through gaps that closed seconds after they passed, but the maze could only delay the inevitable. They emerged into the throne chamber itself, a vast space of organic architecture that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Queen the Sarake waited for them. She stood at the center of her domain like a goddess of nightmares, her massive form casting shadows that seemed to move with independent life. Hundreds of warriors surrounded her, their weapons trained on the small group of humans who had dared to violate her sanctum. Impressive, the queen said, her voice filling the chamber like thunder. You have traveled farther than any prey creature in the history of my reign. You have survived conditions that should have killed you 100 times. You have slaughtered my elite guards like vermin. I am genuinely curious how you accomplished this. Do-hyun stepped forward, placing himself between the Sarek and the colonists. Let them go, he said. Your business is with me. My business is with whomever I choose, the queen replied. And I choose to keep all of you, particularly your female. She has been most educational during our conversations. She is not my female, Do-hyun said. She is her own person who makes her own choices. I am just the idiot who follows her around. The Zarek's compound eyes glittered with alien amusement. Yet you crossed the galaxy for her. You crawled through the waste systems of a living world for her. You fight an empire for her. These actions contradict your words. Welcome to being human. The queen moved closer, her massive form looming over Do-hyun like a mountain preparing to crush an insect. Do you understand what I am? She asked. I have ruled the Dominion for 3,000 years. I have consumed civilizations older than your entire species. I have broken empires and extinguished stars. My name is spoken with terror across 200 systems. She leaned down until her mandibles were inches from his face. Fear me, human. Do-hyun looked up at the ancient horror towering above him and did something that no creature had done in 3 millennia of her reign. He laughed, not nervous laughter or hysterical laughter, but genuine amusement that echoed through the throne chamber, like a slap across the queen's face. Chasing my ex, he said. That is cute. I survived her mother trying to end our relationship for 3 years. You think you are scary? Her mother once made me eat a dish she called traditional family recipe, and I smiled through the whole thing while my stomach tried to escape through my throat. The queen recoiled slightly, confused by this response that fit no pattern in her vast experience. You mock me. I acknowledge reality, Do-hyun said. You are powerful and ancient and terrifying. Congratulations, but I have already made my decision. I am taking these people home, and you can either let us go or learn what happens when you back a human into a corner. You cannot defeat me, probably not. But I can hurt you, and I can keep hurting you until one of us stops moving. And here is the thing about humans that your species database failed to mention. He raised his stolen weapon. We do not know how to quit. The Sarek attacked. The battle was exactly as uneven as physics demanded. The queen moved with speed that seemed impossible for her size, her claws carving through the air where Do-hyun had been standing milliseconds before. He rolled and fired and rolled again, never staying in one place, never giving her a clean target. She was stronger and faster and older than anything he had ever faced. He did not care. He used the environment against her, toppling organic structures, creating barriers, forcing her to choose between chasing him and protecting her warriors. He fought dirty in ways that made the Volcari warriors hiss with outrage. He threw things in her eyes and cut at her joints and refused to stand still for even a moment. Blood flowed from a dozen wounds on his body, but he kept moving. The queen caught him eventually, her massive claw closing around his torso and lifting him off the ground. Ribs cracked and something internal tore, but Do-hyun barely noticed. Enough, the Sarek snarled. You have fought well for a primitive, but this ends now. Do-hyun looked past her and smiled. You are right, he said. It does. The Sarek turned behind her, Myre had reached the central neural cluster, the organic brain that connected the queen to her living throne world. The xenobiologist had spent her captivity studying Valkyrie biology for exactly this moment. The structure is essentially a giant organism. Myre called out, and you are its brain. Every sensation it feels, you feel, which means she drove her hand into the neural cluster. The queen screamed. It was a sound that shook the walls and dropped warriors to their knees. A scream of agony that echoed through every corridor of the living world as Myre's interference sent cascading signals of pain through the entire system. Tesseract released Dohyun and staggered, her perfect control shattering as her connection to her throne world became a conduit for suffering. Stop, the queen gasped. Stop, and I will give you terms. Myre looked at Dohyun, nodded. She released the cluster in the silence that followed. Queen Desirac of the Valkyrie Dominion learned what fear truly meant. The Valkyrie Dominion stretched across 200 star systems like a cancer spreading through healthy tissue, consuming everything it touched and leaving nothing behind but silence and empty worlds. Dohyun had studied their territory during his military service, memorizing patrol routes and border fortifications. The human intelligence had painstakingly gathered over decades of Cold War. That knowledge would either save his life or prove completely useless. He suspected the answer lay somewhere in between. The border zone between human space and the Dominion was a graveyard of ships, debris fields from countless small engagements drifting through the void like metallic snowflakes. Doni guided the Persistent through this maze of wreckage, using the dead ships as cover, while Valkyrie patrol vessels swept past on their endless routes. They were looking for warships. They were looking for invasion fleets. They were not looking for one small cargo hauler with its engines cold and its pilot barely breathing. Dohyun had put himself into a near hibernation state, slowing his metabolism until his body used almost no oxygen and produced almost no heat. The Valkyrie sensors scanned for life signs and found nothing but frozen metal. For 3 days he drifted, waking only for brief moments to make tiny course corrections before sinking back into darkness. On the 4th day he crossed into Dominion space. The change was immediate and unsettling. Human space felt empty and wild. Frontier territory still being explored, and settled Valkyrie space felt old and controlled. Every asteroid catalogued, every moon claimed, every planet stripped of resources to feed the endless hunger of the hive. Dohyun reactivated his engines and began searching for allies. The Valkyrie had conquered many species over their long history, but not all conquered peoples accepted their fate quietly. Resistance movements existed in the shadows, groups of rebels who remembered freedom and refused to forget it. Orinthi were one such group. They had been a proud avian species once, soaring through the skies of their homeworld on wings that caught the light like stained glass. Now they served as laborers and technicians for the Dominion, their wings clipped, their songs forbidden, their children raised to know nothing but servitude. But some still remembered. Dohyun found their hidden base on a frozen moon orbiting a gas giant, following coordinates that human intelligence had obtained years ago and never found reason to use. The base was carved into the ice itself, invisible from above, accessible only through a narrow canyon that wound through glaciers like a frozen river. He landed the Persistent and stepped out into cold that bit through his suit like teeth. Orinthi warriors surrounded him immediately, their clipped wings making them clumsy on the ground, their eyes burning with suspicion and old pain. Human, their leader said. Stepping forward through the circle, she was taller than the others, her feathers scarred and dull, one eye replaced with a mechanical implant that glowed red in the darkness. I am Kethis, she said, and you are either very brave or very stupid to come here alone. Probably both, Dohyun admitted. I need information about Queen the Sarik's throne world. Kethis made a sound that might have been laughter. The throne world is the most heavily defended location in the Dominion. No one enters without the Queen's permission. No one leaves without her blessing. What you ask for is the location of your own grave. I have been to worse funerals. Something in his voice made Kethis pause. She studied him with her one organic eye. And whatever she saw there changed something in her expression. Why would a human come alone into the heart of our enemy's territory? She asked. What drives you to seek death so eagerly? The Queen took someone I care about, Do-hyun said. I intend to take her back. One person, Kethis said flatly. You risk everything for one person. Yes. The Orienthi warriors exchanged glances to them. The concept seemed foreign, perhaps even insane. Their species thought in terms of flocks and communities. Collective survival rather than individual bonds. Kethis opened her beak to respond, but stopped when alarms began screaming through the frozen corridors. Valkyrie patrol. Someone shouted. They have found us. The next few minutes dissolved into chaos warriors, scrambled for weapons while others began destroying sensitive equipment. Kethis barked orders in her own language, organizing the evacuation with practiced efficiency. This had happened before. Do-hyun realized the resistance lived in constant motion, always one step ahead of discovery. Always running, the patrol ship descended through the canyon, its searchlights cutting through the darkness like blades. Do-hyun counted the warriors it would carry and made a decision. Get your people out, he told Kethis. I will handle this. She stared at him. You will handle a fully armed patrol vessel. I will handle it. He did not wait for her response. The patrol ship landed and 12 Valkyrie warriors emerged, their weapons raised, their compound eyes scanning for targets. Do-hyun turned off his suit lights and disappeared into the shadows. Valkyrie operated on the assumption that all species feared darkness, that prey animals naturally sought light and safety when threatened. They had never encountered a species that hunted in the dark. Do-hyun moved through the shadows like a ghost, using his ears and nose to track the warriors. When his eyes failed him, the first one died without a sound. Do-hyun's knife sliding between the plates of its exoskeleton and severing something vital. The second heard a noise and turned just in time to catch a blade in its throat. The third and fourth died together, their screams muffled by the howling wind. By the time the remaining warriors realized something was wrong, half their number had vanished into the darkness. They began firing wildly, their energy weapons lighting up the canyon with strobing flash. Do-hyun used the chaos to close distance, appearing and disappearing between the bursts of light like a nightmare given form. When the last warrior fell, Do-hyun stood alone in the canyon surrounded by bodies. His breath came hard and his hands trembled from adrenaline. But he forced himself to move, dragging the bodies out of sight. Hiding any evidence of what had happened. At Kethis found him there an hour later, still working despite the exhaustion that threatened to drag him down. You killed them all, she said, her voice strange. Yes. In complete darkness. Yes. She was quiet for a long moment. The Valkyrie have records on every species they have conquered. She finally said, I have seen those records. They know everything about us. Our weaknesses, our fears, our limitations. But I have never seen any records about humans. We are not worth studying, Do-hyun said. We have no hive mind, no special abilities, no great technology. We are just soft creatures from a small planet in an unimportant part of the galaxy. I am beginning to think that assessment is incorrect. Kethis helped him to his feet and led him back into the base, where the other Orienthi had returned after realizing the threat had been eliminated. They looked at Do-hyun differently now. The throne world is called Velkar Prime, Kethis said as they walked. It is not truly a planet, but a living structure grown from organic material over thousands of years. The Queen sits at its heart like a spider in her web, feeling every vibration, controlling every function. How do I get inside? You do not. No one enters without passing through security checkpoints designed to detect any foreign biology. Your human scent alone would trigger alarms throughout the entire structure. Do-yoon considered this. What about the waste systems? Kathis stopped walking. The waste processing tunnels are unguarded because no creature would willingly enter them. The conditions inside are toxic, corrosive, lethal to most known species. Most known species. She studied him again with that strange expression. You would crawl through the digestive waste of a living world to save one person. I would crawl through worse. Kathis made that laughing sound again. But this time, it carried something different, respect, perhaps, or pity. I will give you the coordinates, she said. And I will pray to whatever gods still listen that your madness proves contagious. The galaxy could use more insanity like yours. Do-yoon thanked her and returned to his ship as the persistent lifted off and set course for Velkar Prime. He allowed himself one moment of doubt, then he pushed it aside and focused on the task ahead. Mary was waiting, and Do-yoon Kang had never broken a promise to her yet. The sky over Hespera 7 burned orange as 3 suns began their slow descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty settlement that humans had carved from this alien world over the past decade. Sergeant Do-yoon Kang stood outside the Colonial Administration building with a folder tucked under his arm, watching the sunset without really seeing it. The folder contained divorce papers. He had traveled 14 days through 3 jump gates to reach this frontier colony, not for adventure or glory, but to sign his name on a legal document that would end 7 years of marriage to Dr. Myra Yoon. She worked here now, studying alien plant life in laboratories far from Earth and even farther from the apartment they had once shared there. Marriage had not ended with screaming or betrayal. It had simply faded like a photograph, left too long in sunlight, colors bleeding away until nothing remained but the outline of what once existed. Do-yoon checked his watch and decided he would find a bar before meeting her. Tomorrow he needed something strong to prepare himself for that conversation. He never got the chance. The first warning came as a low hum that vibrated through his chest before his ears could register the sound. Do-yoon looked up and felt his blood turn to ice. Ships descended through the orange clouds like black needles, dozens of them, their surfaces gleaming with a wet organic sheen that made them look grown rather than built. He knew those ships. Every human who served in the frontier forces knew them. The Velkari had come. Colonists began screaming and running in every direction as the ships touched down and hatches opened to release swarms of insectoid warriors. Each Velkari stood nearly 3 meters tall with 4 arms ending in serrated claws, their exoskeletons the color of dried blood, their compound eyes reflecting the chaos around them. Without emotion, Do-yoon dropped the divorce papers and pulled the pistol he always carried, a habit from his military days that Myra had often criticized. He shot the first Velkari that came near him, the energy bolt punching through its thorax and dropping it instantly. He shot 3 more before they adapted to his position and began flanking. In training took over. He moved between buildings, using cover, conserving ammunition, trying to reach the research complex where Myra worked, but there were too many of them for every warrior he killed. 10 more appeared. The Colonial Defense Force fought bravely, but they were farmers and scientists with weapons, not soldiers. They fell quickly. Do-yoon reached the research complex just in time to see a massive shape emerge from the largest ship. Queen the Sark stood 5 meters tall, her form combining the worst features of a mantis and a spider, her carapace decorated with gold and jewels harvested from 100 conquered worlds. She moved through the battlefield with terrible grace, her personal guards surrounding her as she examined the fleeing humans with obvious curiosity. And watched from behind a burning transport vehicle as the Queen pointed one elegant claw toward the research complex her warriors surged. Forward he ran. He burst through the complex doors and found chaos inside. Scientists huddled in corners while Valkyrie warriors moved through the halls, selecting prisoners with careful precision. They wanted specific humans. Do-hyun realized this was not random slaughter. This was harvesting. He found Mireille in her laboratory, standing protectively in front of her research team as a Valkyrie warrior advanced toward them. Do-hyun shot the warrior in the back of its head. Mireille turned and her eyes widened when she saw him. Do-hyun, what are you? Later, he said, grabbing her arm. We need to move now. They made it halfway to the emergency exit before the wall exploded inward. Queen Dazarek herself stepped through the rubble, her compound eyes fixing on Mireille with unmistakable interest. A xenobiologist, the Queen said, her voice a chorus of clicks and hisses that somehow formed human words. How delightful. I have questions about your species that require expert answers. Do-hyun raised his weapon. A warrior struck him from behind and he went down hard. His pistol skittering across the floor, he tried to rise, but a massive clawed foot pressed him into the ground, cracking two of his ribs. Through blurred vision, he watched as warriors seized Mireille and the other scientists, dragging them toward the waiting ships. Do-hyun! Mireille screamed his name as they pulled her away. He reached toward her uselessly, his fingers closing on empty air. Queen Dazarek paused and looked down at him with something that might have been amusement. This one fights, she observed, unusual for such a soft species, but ultimately pointless. Do not worry, little creature. I will take excellent care of your female. Her knowledge will serve the Dominion well. Then she was gone, sweeping out through the ruined wall, and Do-hyun could only watch as the ships lifted off and vanished into the darkening sky. He lay there for a long time. Other survivors found him eventually and brought him to the makeshift medical center that had been established in the aftermath. The colonial administrator, a tired woman named Director Vasquez, came to see him after his ribs had been treated. We have received your service record from Earth Command, she said. I understand you want to pursue the Valkyrie ships. I do, Do-hyun said simply. Director Vasquez shook her head sadly. Sergeant Kang, I cannot authorize such a mission. The Valkyrie Dominion controls over 200 star systems. Their military forces number in the billions. Queen Dazarek alone commands a fleet that could destroy every human colony in the frontier. What you are proposing is suicide. I did not ask for authorization, Do-hyun said. I asked for a ship. I cannot give you that either. Do-hyun stood despite the pain in his chest and looked the director directly in the eyes. Then I will take one. He walked out. Before she could respond, the colonial shipyard had been damaged in the attack, but several vessels remained intact. Do-hyun chose a small cargo hauler called the Persistent, a name that felt appropriate. He was loading supplies when Admiral Chun arrived, an old man with white hair and tired eyes who had come from the nearest military outpost. Son, the Admiral said, I have been fighting the Valkyrie for 30 years. I have seen what they do to prisoners. I have seen entire civilizations disappear into their breeding pits. You cannot save those people. You will only add yourself to the body count. Do-hyun continued loading ammunition crates. I understand your feelings, the Admiral continued. But feelings do not win wars against superior forces. The mathematics here are simple. One human against an empire equals one dead human. My mathematics are different, Do-hyun said. How so? Do-hyun sealed the cargo bay and turned to face the old officer. She still has my dog tags, he said. I gave them to her on our wedding day. Told her to keep them until I came home from whatever war one was fighting. She never gave them back, even when things went bad between us. Even when she moved here to get away from me, she kept them. Admiral Chun frowned in confusion. Dog tags? If she wanted to be done with me completely, she would have returned them, Do-hyun said. She did not. That means something. I am not sure what, but I intend to find out. And I will need those tags back to do it. He climbed into the ship and began the launch sequence, Admiral. Chung called up to him one final time. You are flying into the heart of an empire that has devoured entire civilizations. You understand this? Do-hyun looked down at the old man and almost smiled. She survived her mother trying to end our relationship for 3 years. He said, if Myri can handle that, she can handle bugs. I just need to go remind her that giving up is not something we do. The persistent lifted off and climbed toward the stars below. Admiral Chun watched until the ship vanished from sight, then shook his head slowly. Humans, he muttered to no one in particular. We really are an insane species. The darkness of space swallowed the small ship whole. But inside its cockpit, Do-hyun Kang set his course for the Valkyrie Dominion and did not look back.